You are sitting at your desk.
Right.
The room is totally quiet,
Uh,
and you have this task sitting right in front of you.
right.
It could be drafting that quarterly proposal for your boss, or finally cleaning out all the wreckage in your
Oh,
garage.
yeah, the garage. Or even just something super simple like replying to an email from a friend that you've left unread for like 3 weeks.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is, you have to do it. You literally have the time to do it right now.
The tools are right there at your fingertips.
Right. They're right there. But as you stare at the screen, or like the door to the garage, this really heavy, invisible weight just settles over your shoulders.
It's off.
Your chest tightens up. It honestly feels like your hands are physically tied to the armrests of your chair.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking.
Yeah.
The anxiety is totally mounting. But you just sit there. You are completely paralyzed, probably scrolling through your phone or just staring at the wall.
Doing absolutely anything to avoid crossing that starting line.
Exactly. Just doing nothing.
It is this incredibly visceral, almost painful experience. And, well, I think what is most tragic about it is the internal monologue that usually goes along with that paralysis.
Oh, man, the self-flagellation.
Yes, the self-blame is so intense. You sit there calling yourself lazy, unmotivated, undisciplined.
You really do.
You start to wonder what is fundamentally broken in your brain. Like, why can't I just do the basic things that seemingly everyone else can do with total ease?
And that internal monologue, it is so universal. But the material we are diving into today for this deep dive, it completely shatters that whole narrative.
It really does flip it on its head.
It does. We are dismantling that self-blame today.
Yeah.
Because, and this is the core mission of our deep dive, this paralysis isn't a flaw in your work ethic.
Right, it's not apathy at all.
No, it is actually this hidden, intensely powerful, and totally misunderstood form of perfectionism.
Which sounds crazy at first.
Right. But we are going to map out the psychological architecture behind this paralysis. We want to understand where it comes from and explore how you can take this seemingly crippling trait and actually flip it into an unstoppable superpower.
The psychological paradox operating under the surface here is just profound because, we often assume that inaction stems from a lack of capacity, like you don't have the energy.
Yeah, that's what society tells us.
But the source material shows that sometimes we are actually so deeply subconsciously aware of our own unstoppable momentum.
Wait, our own momentum.
Exactly. Our capacity for this extreme, relentless, all-consuming focus. We are so aware of it that we slam on the brakes before we even put the key in the ignition.
Oh, wow.
We are literally terrified of what happens to us when we go full speed, so we just choose the safety of staying parked in the driveway.
Okay, we really need to fundamentally redefine the word perfectionist to understand this. Because if you ask someone on the street, to draw a picture of a perfectionist, they draw someone in perpetual motion.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Like they picture the person who stays at the office until 3 a.m., agonizing over the exact shade of navy blue in a PowerPoint presentation.
Or the person who straightens the picture frames in a hotel lobby.
Yes. The meticulous, obsessive tinkerer who is, like, always fussing, always adjusting, and completely unable to let a project go.
But see, that is the active perfectionist. That's the classic stereotype we all know. They manage their anxiety by trying to micromanage their environment.
Okay.
But according to the research, there is a completely different, much stealthier manifestation of this trait.
And this is where it gets super interesting.
Right. The ultimate perfectionist is not the one endlessly tweaking the details. The absolute most extreme perfectionist is the person who refuses to start at all. The non-starter.
The non-starter. Which, that feels like a total oxymoron.
It does.
How does an intense, desperate need for everything to be absolutely flawless result in a person producing literally zero work?
It all comes down to anticipating the energetic cost of your own nature.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the non-starter subconsciously knows that once they engage with the task, they lose their autonomy to it. They know they do not possess a reliable off switch.
Ah, I see.
If they open that proposal document, they won't just write a quick, messy draft.
No, they'll fall down a massive research rabbit hole.
Exactly. They will restructure the entire department strategy, they'll skip dinner, they'll completely ignore their family, and basically burn themselves to the ground until that document is a masterpiece.
So they are anticipating the collateral damage of their own focus.
That is exactly it. They are calculating the metabolic and the emotional cost. Your brain is a predictive machine.
Right.
It looks at the task, say, cleaning the garage, and it runs a simulation. It knows you won't just go out there and sweep the floor.
Oh no, if I'm cleaning the garage, I'm building custom shelving.
Yes, you're building shelves, you're color-coding the tools, you're power washing the driveway until 2 in the morning.
It's so true.
The brain recognizes that this level of output is totally unsustainable. And because you know you can't stop halfway, you choose to avoid the on switch entirely just to protect your limited energy reserves.
It's a preemptive defense mechanism.
Exactly, against your own intensity.
That reminds me of, it's like buying a massive 100-hour role-playing video game.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You know the kind I'm talking about, the ones with endless side quests and these huge immersive worlds. And it's a Tuesday night. You have a massive presentation at work the next morning, and the game is sitting right there on your desk, still in the shrink wrap.
And you desperately want to play it.
I really do. But you refuse to even look at the console. It's not that you lack interest in the game. It's this terrifying self-awareness that if you play for, like, just 5 minutes.
You are going to be awake until 4 a.m.
Yes. You'll be hunting a digital dragon at 4 a.m., and your real life will completely fall apart the next day. So the safest play is to just never break the shrink wrap.
That video game analogy perfectly captures this anticipatory fear. You aren't afraid of the game itself, right?
Right.
You are afraid of the version of yourself that the game unlocks, the version of you that loses all sense of time, boundaries, and basic physical needs.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Okay.
Because I struggle with framing this as a purely defensive or almost like cowardly act.
Okay, let's look at that.
If you know you're going to work incredibly hard on something and give it your absolute all, why do we treat this paralysis as a disease?
That is the big question.
I mean, if I have a trait that guarantees I will produce a world-class, flawless outcome once I actually start, shouldn't we view that hesitation simply as the appropriate gathering of massive resources?
Yes, exactly.
Why do we let society label this as laziness when it's actually an indicator of supreme, albeit maybe overwhelming, capability?
That right there is the pivotal reframe of this whole deep dive, because society observes the inaction and they judge it purely on surface-level output.
Which is so unfair.
It is. Capitalism, the modern workplace, the traditional school system, they really only measure what is visible. So they see a blank page, they see a missed deadline, and they immediately diagnose it as a moral failing.
They say, you are procrastinating. You lack discipline.
Right. But internally, neurologically speaking, your system is managing an intense resource allocation problem.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
If you find yourself paralyzed by tasks, the source material is very clear. It is not proof of cowardice. It is an incredibly accurate assessment of your own intense nature.
It's supreme self-awareness.
Yes. You are correctly anticipating that you require oxygen tanks for the Mariana Trench, while everyone else around you is just casually snorkeling.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
You need the oxygen tanks for the trench. So the paralysis is actually a profound form of self-preservation.
Exactly.
You are protecting yourself from getting locked into this hyper-focused state that will consume everything else in your life.
Right.
But, okay, if the fear of not stopping keeps us from starting, what exactly is the texture of that fear? Like, what are we so afraid of encountering once the gears actually start turning?
That's the next layer down.
Because it can't just be the loss of time or skipping a meal. There has to be a specific pain point in the actual process of the work that we are trying so desperately to avoid.
You hit the nail on the head. The specific pain point is the confrontation with imperfection.
Oh.
It leads us directly into the sheer terror of the rough draft and the agonizing psychological friction of making mistakes and then having to rectify them.
The blank page. The blinking cursor.
It's intimidating.
It really is. The demand from everyone to just get something down on paper. I mean, nothing induces a cold sweat quite like the expectation of a messy first attempt.
So to understand the unique horror of the rough draft for this person, we really have to contrast the non-starter with that active perfectionist we discussed earlier.
The one tweaking the PowerPoint.
Right, let's call them the reviser. So the reviser is willing to initiate momentum. They get words on the page, they get paint on the canvas.
But they can't leave it alone.
Exactly. Their perfectionism manifests in constant stuttering stops to fix things. They write a sentence, they hate a single word, they delete it, rewrite it, change the font, and agonize over the margins before they even move to sentence 2.
So they endure the friction, but it's this painful, agonizing crawl forward.
Right. The defining characteristic of the reviser is that they have, at least to some degree, accepted the inevitability of flawed output.
Oh, interesting.
They push through the pain of imperfection. Now, they absolutely despise the flaws, but they are willing to inhabit the discomfort of fixing them.
Okay, and the non-starter.
The non-starter views this entire dynamic as fundamentally unacceptable. For the non-starter, the act of revision itself is a violation of their standard.
This is a wild concept for me to wrap my head around. Because for most people, revising a project feels like progress.
Right, it feels good to fix things.
Yeah, you write a clunky paragraph, you edit it, it gets sharper. You feel good because you are moving closer to the goal.
Sure.
But the text says that for this extreme type of perfectionist, revision doesn't feel like polishing a diamond. It feels like moving backward.
Exactly
It feels like actively destroying a structure they've just begun to build.
Let's look at the psychology of building for a second to really get this. Imagine you are constructing a brick wall.
Okay, I'm building a wall.
Right. A neurotypical worker builds a row, spots a crooked brick, chips away the mortar, replaces the brick, and just keeps going. The structural integrity remains totally fine.
Right, it's just a quick fix.
Now, a reviser perfectionist might obsessively measure every single brick with a laser level, which slows the process down immensely, but they still eventually build the wall.
Okay, and the non-starter.
The non-starter perfectionist looks at a single crooked brick and experiences a catastrophic loss of faith in the entire project.
Oh, wow. So one bad brick ruins the wall.
To them, the wall is ruined. Fixing the brick feels like admitting the entire foundation was rotten from the start. Tearing it down and rebuilding is so emotionally agonizing that it just feels safer to stare at the empty lot.
Safe, zero risk, but entirely unproductive.
Exactly.
Yeah, the brick wall analogy is super interesting, but I think it's even deeper than just replacing a brick for these people.
How so?
It feels more like the rough draft isn't made of bricks at all. For the non-starter, the rough draft is like this giant, flawless pane of glass.
Oh, that's really good.
Right. If there's a typo or a clunky sentence or a bad brushstroke, you can't just chip it out and patch it. The glass is completely shattered.
The whole thing is broken.
Yeah, the whole thing is fundamentally ruined, and you have to sweep up all the shards and go manufacture an entirely new piece of glass from scratch. And if every mistake requires a total reset, well, of course, you'd be terrified to even touch the glass.
That is a phenomenal way to articulate the fragility of their process. Every action carries these apocalyptic stakes.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is, and this brings us to the real psychological engine driving this terror. The text calls it cognitive dissonance.
Okay, cognitive dissonance.
That's correct.
I've heard the term, but how does it apply here?
In this specific context, cognitive dissonance is the excruciating, almost physical pain generated by the gap between the flawless, ideal vision in your head and the messy, clumsy reality taking shape in the physical world.
Oh man, I definitely have that pain. You have this brilliant concept for an essay or a business plan or a piece of music, and in your mind, it is transcendent.
It's perfect.
It flows perfectly. It is going to change your whole industry. It is an absolute masterpiece.
But the exact moment you attempt to translate that masterpiece from the ethereal realm of your mind into the physical realm, the very moment you type the first word, reality corrupts it.
Yes.
The sentence is wooden, the formatting is ugly, the nuance is totally lost, the gap between your mental ideal and the physical reality is sudden, it's jarring, and it is violently disappointing.
And most people, they expect that gap. They know the first draft is going to be terrible.
Right, they bridge the gap.
Yeah, they build a bridge across that gap through editing. They know it's a process.
But the non-starter refuses to tolerate the existence of the gap.
At all.
Not at all. The dissonance between, I am a capable person with a brilliant idea and I just wrote a complete garbage sentence, that dissonance is so loud and so uncomfortable that their brain seeks an immediate escape hatch.
And what's the escape hatch?
The most effective way to eliminate the dissonance is to eliminate the reality.
Oh, wow.
If you choose nothingness, if you close the laptop and go watch television, the bad sentence ceases to exist. The gap closes.
So by trying to protect the ideal from the messy, humiliating reality of the rough draft, the non-starter ironically guarantees that the ideal will never, ever exist.
That's the trap.
They love their idea so much they literally suffocate it. They keep it locked in this pristine imaginary vacuum where it can never be criticized, but where it can also never be realized.
It is the ultimate tragic irony of extreme perfectionism. The absolute intention is to create something flawless, but the actual measured outcome is zero creation.
It's so sad when you frame it that way.
The fear of a flawed reality entirely overrides the innate human desire to just manifest an idea.
But let's dig into the why behind this intolerance, because this is what I really want to know.
Sure.
Why is this gap so unbearable?
Mm.
I mean, if I know intellectually that every great novelist writes terrible first drafts, why can't my brain just accept that?
That's a great question.
Why can't the non-starter say, okay, this first attempt is a total disaster, but I will systematically improve it tomorrow? Why does it have to be a masterpiece on the very first try, or it just goes in the trash bin?
Well, the text explains that it's because the non-starter's cognitive framework does not allow for incremental progress.
Okay.
It stems from a deeply ingrained, extremely rigid worldview. It is an issue of cognitive framing, specifically what they call the trap of 0 or 100 thinking.
The 0 or 100 trap.
Yeah.
The absolute evaporation of the middle ground.
Exactly. Let's examine how a healthy workflow actually functions.
Okay.
A neurotypical workflow operates on a spectrum. You have options, right? You can say, I'll give this 30 minutes of a 50% effort just to get the skeleton down.
Right.
Or, I'll try this new hobby, and if I'm not great at it, I'll just enjoy being a beginner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These are the 20s, the 40s, the 70s on the scale of engagement.
It's like operating on a dimmer switch. You could just slide the lights up to a low glow, see how the room looks, and slowly bring it up to full brightness if you actually need it.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. But the non-starter does not possess a dimmer switch. The middle options have been completely uninstalled from their psychological hardware.
Completely uninstalled.
Yes. For them, every single task, no matter how trivial it is, demands interaction with a massive industrial high-voltage breaker switch.
Oh, man.
It is a binary choice. It is either I must commit to executing this flawlessly, right this second, sacrificing all other needs until it is a 100, or I will leave the switch at 0 and just sit in the dark.
I mean, think about how physically and mentally draining it is to live with that industrial breaker switch.
It's exhausting.
If you are operating like this, you must be exhausted all the time. You are taking tiny, mundane challenges and inflating them into monumental, life-altering decisions.
Every single day.
Right. If organizing your digital files means you have to create a color-coded, cross-referenced meta-tagging system spanning 10 years of documents, or else you consider the whole effort a failure, well, of course you're just going to leave everything sitting on your messy desktop.
You have to.
The sheer, terrifying volume of energy required to hit 100 on every single task is biologically unsustainable for a human being.
It guarantees burnout before the fire is even lit.
Yep.
The cost of entry for any action is so astronomically high that inaction becomes the only logical, self-preserving choice. When the only acceptable outcome is absolute, unmitigated perfection, attempting anything carries a near 100% probability of failure.
I keep thinking about where this breaker switch comes from, though.
Right, the origins.
Because babies aren't born terrified of a rough draft. Toddlers don't refuse to finger paint because they are worried about cognitive dissonance.
No, they don't.
So this intense binary 0 or 100 approach, it has to be a learned behavior. And if it's learned, that means there's a mechanism to unlearn it.
Yes, and the environmental origins of this mindset are absolutely crucial to unpack here.
Okay, break that down for me.
This extreme binary thinking is meticulously cultivated over years, usually starting in early childhood. And what is most insidious about it, according to the research, is that it is rarely the result of trauma or malicious parenting.
Really?
Yeah, it is almost always the result of well-meaning, culturally celebrated advice.
Oh, wow. It's the curse of the gifted child, isn't it?
It is exactly that.
The kids who show a little bit of early promise and suddenly find themselves totally crushed under the weight of expectation.
The gifted child phenomenon is a primary incubator for this type of paralysis. Think about the messaging these kids receive growing up.
Okay.
Don't do things halfway. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Always give 110%.
But on the surface, those sound like the foundational pillars of a strong work ethic.
They do.
They sound like great advice. I mean, every coach, every teacher, every parent repeats these exact phrases. You want kids to learn commitment.
You do, but we have to look at how an earnest, highly sensitive child internalizes that specific language.
Okay, how do they hear it?
When a sensitive child hears if it's worth doing right, Every single time they attempt a task, they do not hear a call for mere effort.
What do they hear?
They hear a conditional requirement for worthiness.
Oh, that is heavy.
It is. Over years and decades, these seemingly harmless platitudes calcify into a rigid, unforgiving psychological law. They learn that anything less than perfect, 100% completion is not just a missed opportunity, but a shameful personal failure.
Wow.
The middle ground, the entire concept of learning, failing, and iterating, is basically conditioned right out of them.
So they learn really early on that a 99 is functionally identical to a 0.
Yes.
If I bring home a 99 on a math test, and the first question I'm asked is, what happened to the other point? My brain learns that near perfection is still a failure.
It sets up a terrifying paradigm.
It sets a paradigm where if I can't absolutely guarantee a gold medal before the race even starts, stepping onto the track is a risk I simply cannot afford to take.
Exactly. And this shifts the blame entirely, doesn't it?
It totally does. This paralysis isn't a lack of character. It is the heavy, invisible accumulation of external pressures that forced you to view the world through this incredibly narrow, high-stress lens.
Understanding the external origin of this trait is the very first step toward dismantling the immense guilt that non-starters carry around every day.
It's so validating.
It really is. You are not operating with a broken moral compass. You are just executing a faulty software program that was installed by your environment a very long time ago.
But the tragedy goes even deeper than just bad advice, I think.
How so?
Because it wasn't just the phrases that messed with our heads. It was how society actually reacted on the rare occasions when we did flip that breaker switch all the way to 100.
Oh, yes.
It feels like society inadvertently convinced us that our greatest, most powerful strength was actually this really annoying character flaw.
This is a huge point, and this is where we transition from just diagnosing the paralysis to understanding the immense, untapped power sitting underneath it.
Let's get into it.
We have to examine the profound societal stigma surrounding an unstoppable nature. Let's observe how the world, parents, teachers, peers, even corporate managers, reacts when they encounter someone who becomes obsessively, intensely, relentlessly absorbed in a task.
They usually freak out. They get highly uncomfortable.
Exactly. Because intense focus disrupts the comfortable, predictable rhythm of a neurotypical environment.
Right.
When you go to 100, you stop responding to the normal social cues. You skip lunch. You talk way too fast about highly specific details. You basically become a disruptive force.
Ruining the vibe.
Right. And the people around you, often out of a misguided sense of care, they start actively trying to suppress your momentum.
They say things like, take it easy, don't overdo it.
Yes.
Or like, it's just a school project, you don't need to stay up all night. You need to relax, you're being way too intense.
Now, to the person offering those comments, they think they're simply trying to help you maintain balance.
Sure.
But to the receiver, the person who is finally engaged, finally operating at their natural, exhilarating 100% capacity, these comments are devastating.
I can imagine.
They are internalized as a harsh rejection of their authentic self. Over time, the individual learns a terrible lesson. They think, my natural capacity for hyperfocus makes people uncomfortable. My passion is too much. Therefore, my intensity is a defect.
So they learn to mask it. They think, if caring deeply makes me a weirdo, I'll just pretend I don't care at all.
Yes.
I will make myself small. I will dilute my passion. I'll just blend in, do the bare minimum, and never let anyone see how fast I can really run.
They suppress their nature just to survive socially. They bottle up the intensity. But the laws of physics apply to psychology here, too. Energy cannot be destroyed.
This is the turning point of this entire deep dive right here. This is where we flip the whole paradigm.
Let's do it.
Because this terrifying, obsessive, all-or-nothing momentum, it isn't a defect at all. It isn't a disease.
No, it's not.
The ability to lock onto a target, completely block out the noise of the world, and relentlessly push through a complex task to the absolute very end is an incredibly rare, highly lucrative, and deeply sought-after talent.
It is the ultimate talent.
This is the exact trait that is responsible for every major scientific breakthrough, every artistic masterpiece, and every massive entrepreneurial success in human history.
The energy hasn't disappeared just because you have spent 20 years hiding it to make other people comfortable.
Right.
It has simply been compressed. By shrinking yourself to avoid criticism, you have basically taken a massive industrial-grade engine of focus and stuffed it into a tiny, socially acceptable box.
And the pressure inside that box is immense.
Exactly. When that energy is finally validated, unleashed, and directed with real intention, the stored-up power is staggering.
It is exactly like owning a custom-built Formula One Ferrari.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right, but you've been forced to live your entire life in this quiet, manicured residential neighborhood where the speed limit is 15 miles per hour.
Okay, picture that.
So every time you even tap the accelerator, the engine roars, the tires spin, and all your neighbors run out of their houses waving their arms, screaming, "Slow down. You're making too much noise.
You're doing it.
Drive like a normal person." So after years of being shamed for your engine, you just park the Ferrari in the garage.
You hide it.
You pull a tarp over it. You start to genuinely believe the car is broken because it physically cannot just put along at 15 miles per hour.
Right.
But the car isn't broken. It's a masterpiece of high-performance engineering. You don't have a broken car. You just have the wrong racetrack.
The Ferrari analogy is the perfect lens for this whole phenomenon. The non-starter feels defective because they are judging their Ferrari engine by the standards of a golf cart.
Exactly.
A golf cart.
They have internalized the idea that their inability to do things casually is a fundamental failure, rather than recognizing it as a capacity for extraordinary depth. You're simply not designed for casual engagement. You are designed for deep work.
Okay, let's say you are the listener right now, and the light bulb just went off.
They're having the realization.
Right, you realize, I am not lazy. I am sitting on a massive, compressed, high-performance engine in my garage.
How do you actually take the tarp off without crashing the car into a wall? Because the fear of the ref draft, the fear of the cognitive dissonance, the fear of your own momentum, those neurological pathways are still deeply, deeply entrenched.
They don't just vanish overnight.
No, they don't. So how do we practically apply this revelation? How do we reclaim this superpower in the real world?
The path forward requires a systemic rewiring of how you view yourself and how you interact with your environment. And it begins with an act of radical self-acceptance.
Radical self-acceptance.
You have to consciously, deliberately stop waiting for external validation. You have to stop waiting for a boss, a parent, or a partner to tell you that your intense nature is acceptable.
You have to give yourself permission.
Exactly. You have to grant yourself permission to be exactly as intense as you actually are.
Which is incredibly difficult after a lifetime of masking.
It is the hardest part.
How do you actually do that on a Tuesday morning when you're staring at a blank screen and panicking?
You have to actively intercept and rewrite the narrative in your head in real time. When you feel that surge of unstoppable momentum building and the familiar panic sets in telling you to just shut down, you have to label it correctly.
What do you say?
You have to tell yourself, this is my talent waking up.
Oh, I like that.
It requires a profound perspective shift. The ability to fully commit and see something through to the bitter end is a strength that people who constantly quit things halfway actively desperately envy.
That is undeniably true. I mean, people pay tens of thousands of dollars to attend executive retreats, hire productivity gurus, and buy supplements just to manufacture a fraction of the raw, obsessive focus that a perfectionist naturally generates the moment they finally engage with the task.
It's true. Therefore, you must consciously own it.
Own the intensity.
Right. But to combat the overwhelming, paralyzing nature of the 0 or 100 binary trap, you must also rebuild your trust in your own brakes.
Okay, how do we do that?
You need to prove to your nervous system that you can engage with a task without it completely consuming your life. And a highly effective method from the source material is maintaining a private micro-achievement log.
A private log.
Yeah?
So entirely decoupled from external performance metrics.
Entirely private. Nobody sees this but you. The goal is not to prove to the world that you are productive.
What's the goal then?
The goal is to prove to your own brain that the dimmer switch can actually exist.
Okay.
When you manage to engage with a task at a 50, when you write a terrible, messy, rough draft for just 15 minutes, and then you successfully close the laptop and walk away, you record it.
You write it down.
Yes. When you walk into the garage, organize one single shelf, and leave the rest of the huge mess for next weekend, you record it.
So you're slowly accumulating hard evidence that your engine can be controlled.
Precisely. You are teaching your nervous system that starting does not inevitably lead to exhaustion.
I love that the log is private.
Yeah.
It immediately removes the cognitive dissonance of having someone else judge the messy reality.
Yeah. Yes, there's no audience for the rough draft.
But let's be honest, even if you rebuild your brakes, a Ferrari still isn't designed to go to the grocery store.
No, it's not.
Eventually, you have to let the engine roar. And when you go to 100, you can't do everything yourself. Which brings us to the ultimate paradigm shift in how a perfectionist operates in the real world.
Yes. the absolute necessity of building a complementary ecosystem.
The ecosystem.
This is where the theory becomes highly actionable. A person with 100 or 0 energy cannot survive, let alone thrive, in a vacuum.
Right.
Attempting to be the visionary, the executor, and the editor entirely alone leads straight back to the suffocating paralysis we started this whole conversation with.
Because the burden of absolute perfection across every single phase of a project is mathematically impossible for one human being to carry.
It will break you.
If you are trying to build a house, and you demand that you must be the world-class architect, the master bricklayer, the visionary interior designer, and the ruthless building inspector, well, of course you're not going to break ground.
The sheer weight of those simultaneous hats will snap your neck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
The structural solution is to actively, strategically build a team around your specific intensity. You have to audit your own blind spots and find people whose natural operating speeds offset yours.
Okay, so if I'm the intense one,
If you are the person who provides the massive, unstoppable, visionary breakthrough energy, the 100% force that gets the rocket off the ground, you desperately need someone else who excels at detailed, incremental planning.
you need to find the reviser perfectionist we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
The person who actually loves tinkering with the Cricut bricks.
Yes, you need the person who enjoys the meticulous fine-tuning, the person who doesn't experience physical pain when looking at a messy middle stage.
All right.
Or in some scenarios, you simply need a stabilizer, someone who is just a patient listener, a grounding force who can help you untangle your thoughts when the cognitive dissonance gets way too loud and threatens to shut you down.
Okay, I want to introduce some real friction here, though,
Go for it.
because I am putting myself in the shoes of the perfectionist listening to this right now.
Yeah.
Reaching out and explaining this weird, intense quirk about myself to a colleague or a business partner or a spouse that sounds absolutely terrifying.
It requires an immense amount of vulnerability.
It really does.
Yeah.
It requires looking at someone and saying, hey, I have this weird psychological wiring where I either do absolutely nothing or I go completely overboard, and I need you to help manage my rough drafts so I don't self-destruct.
Right.
That feels like exposing the exact underbelly I've spent my entire life trying to hide. So why is this ecosystem step mandatory? Can't I just, muscle through it now that I know my intensity is a superpower?
It is a deeply valid fear. You are asking them to look at the messy machinery behind the curtain, but you cannot muscle through it alone because your raw energy is unrefined.
Unrefined. Okay.
The effort, the vulnerability, and the temporary discomfort of finding these complementary people is the literal price of admission for actualizing your potential.
Wow.
When you combine your breakthrough, unstoppable energy with another person's stabilizing procedural energy, you create a synergy that allows you to reach heights you physically, mathematically could not achieve alone.
It's the difference between a solitary rocket exploding on the launch pad because it had no guidance system and a space program with mission control carefully monitoring the telemetry, guiding that massive raw thrust into a stable orbit.
That is exactly it. Choosing not to carry the burden of perfection entirely by yourself is the single most significant, transformative leap forward a non-starter can ever make.
That makes total sense.
When, with absolute certainty that you have someone on your team to help manage the momentum, someone to act as the brakes, or someone who is explicitly responsible for cleaning up the messy, rough draft the terror of starting evaporates.
Because you aren't carrying it all.
Right. You are no longer solely responsible for perfection at every single microscopic stage. You are only responsible for bringing your unique, intense, 100% energy to the table when it is actually needed.
That is incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It takes the paralyzing pressure completely off.
It really does.
You don't have to desperately try to fix your Ferrari engine to make it drive like a sensible four-door sedan. You just need to find a really good pit crew who knows how to change the tires on a race car while it's running hot.
You acknowledge your nature, you stop fighting your own wiring,
Right.
and you deliberately curate an environment that supports and leverages it rather than constantly suppressing it.
This has been such a profound journey. Let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked today, because we've fundamentally remapped the entire concept of procrastination.
We really have.
We started at that desk with that agonizing feeling of paralysis, the absolute inability to start a seemingly simple task. And we learned that what the world labels as laziness is actually a hidden, intense form of perfectionism.
It's the self-preserving fear of your own unstoppable momentum.
Yes, We dissected how the non-starter refuses to begin because they know they lack an off switch.
Right, and we explored the visceral hatred of the rough draft.
Oh man, the rough draft.
And how the refusal to tolerate the cognitive dissonance, that painful gap between the mental ideal and the messy reality, forces the brain to choose the safety of nothingness.
We realized that the exhausting 0 or 100 binary thinking, where everything must be perfect or not touched at all, is not a genetic flaw.
It is a learned defense mechanism.
Exactly. It's the tragic result of well-meaning but damaging childhood advice and a society that gets inherently uncomfortable when confronted with intense, unrelenting focus.
But the absolute most important takeaway from this entire deep dive is that the intensity you've been hiding in the shadows isn't a flaw.
It is a suppressed superpower.
Yes. It's a compressed, high-performance engine just waiting for the right track and the right pit crew to help you manage the incredible speed.
The transition is moving from a state of paralyzed fear into a state of radical self-acceptance and strategic, vulnerable collaboration.
Beautifully said.
I love that framing. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final lingering question to mull over as you step back into your life.
This is a big one.
Think about the one major project, the business idea, the book, or that one massive life goal you've been putting off for months or maybe even years. We challenge you to look at your deepest avoidance.
Ask yourself this. Are you avoiding that goal because you genuinely don't care about it? Or are you avoiding it because you know deep down in your bones that once you finally give yourself permission to start, you are going to completely change your own life and you won't ever be able to turn back?
What a question to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation has given you an entirely new lens through which to view your own immense potential. Stop being afraid of your own momentum. Build your pit crew and take that first messy, imperfect step today. We will see you next time.